Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of Future Fuzz, a digital marketing podcast with a B2B focus. Today I speak to Reggie James, who has over 25 years of experience in digital strategy, AI-driven marketing, and go-to-market consulting. Reggie has become a trusted advisor to ambitious B2B companies across tech, fintech, blockchain, and financial markets. As the founder of Digital Clarity and director at DBMM Group, he's worked with startups, scale-ups, and Fortune 500 companies to design and execute high-impact strategies that accelerate growth. I started off the show today asking Reggie which story and which project he was most proud of. And let's dive into the show.
One of the great things we've done recently was we helped a company go from struggling with their marketing. They tried so many different things. Obviously, I can't name the company, but we got involved, sat them down in a room, deconstructed where they were, what they're doing, what they're trying, understood why they were trying those different things. And it's all, it's very common. People try and do these things. And then we started asking them questions about their business, about what they do, what they wanted to achieve. Went back to what is it you actually do? Where do you fit into the ecosystem of what you do? Drilled into those specific areas by asking some quite deep questions, and then created a very focused plan that would be reviewed in 4 to 6 months. And we specifically chose that time because that was their deal cycle, if you like, from beginning to end. And one of the things that we did with them was to understand why they were, as a software business, they were getting leads, getting demos to demonstrate their product, but then getting ghosted by that particular.
And how often and when would they get ghosted? I'm really curious because I hear about this a lot.
They would get.
Did they'd already do the demo? They already have a few sales.
Yes, so they would. It would vary. So let's break it down into a couple of percentages. What we found was that with this particular company, 20% of the ghosting would be happening post demo. About 60% would happen on the second or third follow-up call. Yes, I'm interested. Yes, I want to do it.
Right.
We're just talking internally. And then the rest would either lead to them being shortlisted and up against another company. So they would either win the deal or not.
Okay.
So it's not all, was not all negative. So that was the kind of split, if you like.
That's quite a large drop off. That's like 80%.
It happens. It happens a lot. So so if you look at data from things like Sixth Sense, Bain Consulting, all of those different areas, due to the buyer being in control, especially post-COVID, they have access to so much information. They're already making judgments. And I don't know if you've heard about the 95-5 rule. You'll happily talk about. They have almost already made up their mind on who they are going to use. All they really want to do is validate and justify. And so therefore, what my client was struggling with was whether they were going to be part of a beauty parade or actually genuinely interested. And the only way you can do that is to really get deep into the questioning. And we devised a strategy for them in this particular sense, where we would actually be turning people away, which sounds odd, but really drilling it.
Probably you're saving a lot of time.
They were wasting a lot of time because when they got an inquiry, the sales team were doing high fives and ringing bells and stuff, as we all do. And
been there, done that. Yeah.
And the pipeline was a bit of a jackanory. It was like a work of fiction for all our lovely listeners around the world.
Pipeline Delusion.
Pipeline Delusion.
We've had a podcast,
and I can.
You should listen.
I can tell you talk forever about those. But we interrogated their pipeline. We looked at their pipeline. We had a wonderful conversation about it. But what we were doing was not giving them going to a doctor and having a pill, but do what we normally do is giving them a full scan and saying, this is the health of your business, this is the state of your business, and these are the bits, these are the blocked arteries that you need to fix, if you like. And that's what we were doing. So we addressed those by actually using questioning techniques a lot more. And this is where
what was the outcome, Reggie? So when you went through this process, like you confronted the client with a lot of hard truths, right? You said, let's look into your pipeline. Is it really realistic? The sales team are doing high fives when the leads come in, but they're not converting because there's a huge drop-off rate. When they implemented the changes that you put in place, what was the outcome?
In short, and it was a 60% increase in that first year of working, 60% increase in that annual recurring revenue in year one.
Wow.
Second year, 100% plus. And the clue is, if you really want to look, there's a case study on our website. There goes the shameless plug. But in seriousness, what we did was really to understand the business, you need to really get under the skin of it. And and this is where we have the agency delusion, is that you have to educate your prospect to the fact that it's going to be hard work, but enjoyable.
Right.
And the outcome is going to be their desired outcome, but we'll be realistic about it. If they sat down to me and said, I want a 60% increase in my annual recurring revenue, I'd say we can do that, but it's going to cost you a ton of money and it's going to take you, but if we said, if we fix these things, we can't control everything, but if we can fix the things we can control and tweak those, then we can do that. So we put something with that particular focus and then looked at where their customers lived, who their customers actually were, and then looked at how do we engage with buying committees who are making decisions when we're not in the room. And so we started we started a game plan around that. So that's
a brilliant story to show that if you just dive into, take a step back, do an analysis and just dive into what could be the reasons that these things are going wrong.
Yes.
That sounds amazing. So from an 80% drop off to in a 2-year period, like 100% improvement in revenue for a SaaS company.
Absolutely.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. So you're running a consultancy organization that helps companies with a range of different, issues that they're trying to deal with. And one of your main focuses is basically helping companies grow. So why do most companies still choose agencies based on pitch decks instead of fitting in with an idea of a growth strategy? Why do you think that is?
Wow, that's a great question. It is. The thing is, Justin, it's really what's available. There's a kind of default position for many companies. Depending on the size of the organization, if you look at a mid-size business, by mid-size, say 3 to 5 million euros, pounds or euros, up to, say 20, 30 million, annual recurring revenue. The marketing function within those organizations is normally run by somebody who is very used to having an agency, having a third party. They've either even come from an agency, or they have a mate or a brother's uncle's sister who works at someone, and they've had Sunday lunch and they've said, oh, I can help with that. And you'd be surprised that how some of these things, how people get to where they get to. So that's why the agency is the default position. This is agency in the classical sense. Digital agency, web agency, paid search agency, etc., social media. It's the default or go-to position where people say, I'm looking to grow the business. We don't have the availability, or we do have a function in-house, but we need help we need support. And that's where they normally go to. And that's why a slick pitch deck, some of the best agencies are the best salespeople in the world, especially the creative shops. And really, it's not a fault of anyone's. It's just the way the business society is. So for us, we're kind of swimming upstream. We're kind of having to re-educate and entertain and inform, to use that old BBC adage, to help companies really understand that what they may need is somebody that understands the business and then kind of take it from there. So it's that kind of thing.
And you said there something really on point, that some of the best agencies out there, or let's say the ones that win a lot of business, they're very good selling, and they have this this shiny pitch decks, etc. And then we spoke about it before, right? That they then get bought in to an idea. They think that this service is going to work for them, and they believe they're going to work with seniors within the team. But then what ends up happening is that they sort of get bumped down. They end up working with different people than they were speaking to. They get confused, and that's where things unravel. Now, you do something quite different there. Maybe you can tell us about what you do there.
Yeah, absolutely. So like a lot of service-led organizations, the people doing the pitch, the shiny pitch deck and everything else like that. And I think those days they've not necessarily gone, but people can see beyond those. But yeah, it's normally somebody senior talking to the board or talking with authority because they've got the war wounds. They may have built and exited businesses themselves. So the person on the other side of the table, if you like, or the camera, has bought into it. And when people start working together, there's a disconnect, and you end up, in many cases, I wouldn't say in all cases, but in many cases, dealing with the 10th person in the deal team who is learning on the job, who has no rapport with the board or whatever. And if that happens, and it's not saying that they shouldn't happen, because everyone's got to learn something somewhere along the line, it's managing that situation with the client. It's managing the relationship. Because it doesn't matter if someone is working there, as long as there's someone else there with a safe pair of hands, someone with trust. But a lot of this happens at the early stages of the pitch, at the early stages of the engagement process or the onboarding. And that the onboarding for me, and again, in the traditional sense, because it's all changing, we try and meet companies where they are because everyone's different. It's all about being transparent and helping companies understand before they engage. This is what will happen. This is typically what a working relationship will look like. These are the people you will deal with, but you'll still deal with me on X amount of time. So there's that kind of element. And it might even be that the person doing the pitch, and though they win the pitch, that someone better comes along and takes over that scenario. But I think with most prospective customers, with clients, they just want to be understood and to understand as well. I know that sounds a little bit cliched, but they really just want, it's a grown-up conversation. It's as George Bernard Shaw once says, the challenge with communication is the assumption that it's taking place. And great, it's not so much about being slick, it's about having transparent communication. And I think that's really where the top players rise to the top. The shine on the deck soon goes, it soon dulls, and it becomes a distant memory. Of course. When you get into the depths of the relationship, and it only takes a senior leadership person to go up to their board and say, things aren't working. Who the hell hired these people? they don't get us or whatever. And this is where we come in. So we're normally the troubleshooters when people are there. That's how we get, not always, but we get engaged into conversations through relationships and contact, both by agencies and clients. So we also help a lot of agencies. We started life off helping big media planning buying agencies, which I can happily tell you about.
Future Fuzz is sponsored by SalesSource, B2B pipeline management and sales growth for your business.
So what are people coming to you asking for right now? What problems are they faced with? What would you say are the top 3 problems that companies are really struggling with?
In relation to working with a third party or their own actual challenges that they have right now?
Well, if they had a challenge and they wanted to approach a third party to get it fixed, what are those 3 things that they're asking to get fixed?
Again, there's quite a plethora of different challenges that companies have. You can distill them down to under probably 10 points. Number 1, how do I use AI to be more effective? And that is also peppered with what they're really saying, what they're asking. And what they're really saying is, how can I add efficiency so that my shareholders can see that I'm cutting costs but increasing value, and the 2 aren't mutually exclusive. Number 2, it's always about growth. How can I create sustainable growth? How do I get rid of the feast and famine of a good month, good quarter, good year, bad year? How can I create something that those guys over there they just have year-on-year growth. They just continually are growing, they're lean, they're pivoting in the right way. So that's the other kind of question that we always get, how can I grow? Everyone wants growth.
Everyone wants growth, right?
But
and what would be the third one? Let's see if we can rattle through.
Okay. The other one is I'm trying something and it's not working. Everyone's using LinkedIn, and my competition are really using it so well, and I'm not. And I'm doing everything they're doing. It's a Me Too thing, and I'm using everything they're doing, but it's not working. How can I fix that? I've got a real problem with that. I want to be bigger on LinkedIn, and that opens up a whole sort of thing. But as I say, Justin, a lot of these questions, a lot of these challenges are normally down to people, their processes, their partners that they're dealing with, the systems that they use. You can have all the visibility in the world, but if you can't capitalize on that visibility, I've been posting 10 times a day, and it's like, I've started a podcast. Okay. What's going on? Where am I going wrong? Where is that?
Right.
And all of these questions, I'll distill this into a very, very thing. All roads lead to a lack of clear strategy and focus. So
how flexible should those strategies be long term? Do you sometimes feel like organizations and people, we're all humans at the end of the day, they fix upon an idea, they get into the weeds of what the strategy that they're going to execute, and they become too fixated on it, and they ignore the problems that continue? How flexible do you think organizations seem to be?
Wonderful question. I would say that you need to have flexibility in everything. And the reason why you need flexibility in your strategic approach, whether that be a go-to-market function, we at the moment are re-examining programs that were put in place 6 months ago and just aren't landing right now at all.
Right.
And there's a reason for that, because the world has changed, and that's why you need flexibility. It doesn't mean that you bend and turn with every whim and every change that happens in the world. But I can say there has been a seismic shift that if you're not re-examining if you indeed have a strategy, and I'm not talking about a plan, I'm talking about a strategy. If people do have a strategy, and there's only 20% of companies who do have a strategy in place, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And they're normally the successful ones. But if you do have a strategy, the ones that are doing well are because they're constantly re-examining them, pivoting them, tweaking, fine-tuning them, looking at what's working, what's not, and calling in. And this is where we come in with a fresh pair of eyes, because people are so close to what they're doing on the day-to-day, and helping them by asking questions, but also looking at data. Data doesn't tell the full story. It helps as part of a future-facing approach, but it's not necessarily. I've been around long enough to know that if you just purely rely on data, I'm not saying you're going to fail, but you're going to be missing out on all that heavenly glory around you, as Bruce Lee said. So you have to look at things. Nothing is linear. You have to look at a number of different aspects. And so one of the things that we do is we have a grown-up conversation with people, ask them some incredibly difficult questions in a cold room normally, but
in a cold room
to keep them awake, and with a very bright light shining on them as well. But no, it's friendly, it's nurturing, and asking questions, making people aware that if you want to grow, if you want that six-pack, like we were saying, everyone wants growth. And I always use the analogy, everyone wants the six-pack, but they're not willing to go to the gym.
Not willing to
they're not going to do the sleep, the diet, the nutrition. They're going to eat the kebab. They're going to go on the lash. Nothing wrong with that, because it's all part of the game.
But you're not going to get the six-pack.
But you can still have the six-pack, but it's how if you factor that in, because that's real life. And a lot of people have a pseudo strategy, which is kind of very linear, and it's there used to be a project management methodology called Prince, projects in controlled environments, but there's no such thing as a controlled environment in the real world. Who'd have thought a year ago we'd be where we are today, hypothetically, geopolitically, but also where we are from a business perspective, the growth of AI, all of these different things are having an impact on what people do. And what we try and do is separate the perception from the reality. But what we also do is we create a perception for our clients, for their prospects, to generate prospects.
So, you know how you talked about the 95 to 5% rule? We've talked about this on the podcast a few times. It's like 95% of your buyers are not ready to buy. And 5% might be in market. I mean, I would actually argue that it's even harder than that. I think it's more like 98% are not in the buying mood and 2% are ready right now. But maybe of that 98%, 40% are being influenced at any stage. Diving into SaaS a bit more, because you have lots of people tuning in the show that come from a SaaS background and they're trying to push their SaaS products. How do you tackle that without being spammy and annoying in your communications?
It's understanding. I mean, the 95-5 rule, which grew out of the LinkedIn B2B Institute, where they did a huge amount of research in it over a period of time. Two great guys who now are running their own thing. They've got it plays on the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. And you're absolutely right. It's probably higher. It's understanding that rule firstly. Okay. So the hard truth for people to try and grasp is that 45% of people don't even know they've got a problem that your solution can fix. Rule number one. Okay. So that's a big swathe of the community that don't care about you. They don't care. So all that messaging you're doing, all that spammy stuff that you talked about, Justin, is just falling on deaf ears. You use it. You're wasting so much energy, time, money, just spamming people. You're actually putting them off. They'll never use you. So a large chunk of people are not in the room. They don't even know they've got a problem.
Yeah.
As they move down the funnel and somebody somewhere says, oh, we've got a problem here, we need to fix it. And then they internally start a committee, or they send someone out to go and look and find a solution to their burning problem. And it's not even a burning problem at that point. As they move along that sideways funnel towards that 5%, and we'll stick with 5% for the moment. When they're nearing the 15-10%, they've already shortlisted companies. So I'm saying this to answer your question, is that really what the content, without being spammy, that you want to be producing, and the communication is firstly understanding that journey, understanding who your customers are, and it's normally not just one, but engaging with those people with the right problem. They don't care about what you do. They really don't care who you are. They really don't care. Can you fix my problem? Okay. Are you the right person to fix my problem? So there's some clues here in terms of what's shaping content, and really not even talking to them, but engaging with them and telling the story, the narrative about, in certain cases, here is Mr. X, who is in this role, and then talking about here is Ms. Y in this role. She was a CFO. She's looking to make savings, and this is how we helped with this scenario.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying it was going to work for you, but this is how we did it. And it's non-salesy. It's genuine. I'm going to use that horrible word, authentic, which is overused. Use AI to help me become more authentic. I
did a post the other day about being authentic. Did very well on LinkedIn. Yeah.
And
but I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think that's, Reggie, a good point, is that maybe we should rename this podcast episode "No One Cares About You." That'll probably get a lot.
It's the Millwall podcast, isn't it? It's the no one loves us, we don't care.
No one loves us, we don't care. Yeah. And I think that is, that's a really valid point, because they, like you said, they've got a problem. A lot of people don't know they've got a problem. 45% are out of the equation, right? But there's a big chunk that have got a problem, and they need someone to help them fix it. And if you communicate that well enough without trying to blow your own trumpet all the time, you'll help them fix that problem, and then you'll get a much better opportunity to convert. But Reggie, we've come to the end of the show. Time flies when you're having fun. I think I say that every time we record. When people want to find you, they can go to digital-clarity.com. Check out the website. It's a really lovely website, I have to say. And check out the case studies as well. So there's some excellent things there. And Reggie, where else can people find you?
You can go to LinkedIn, type in Reggie James. I've also just started my own podcast, so you can find me on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's called Perspectives, because it looks at all aspects of business and gives people a perspective on it, and people give their perspectives on it. And so normally, and you can good old Google, type it in there, Reggie James, and you will find me, or Reggie James Digital Clarity.
Brilliant. Reggie, thanks for coming on.
Justin, absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in and making the choice to listen to this podcast. If you liked what you've heard today, please don't forget to subscribe.